Okay, so we talked this morning about the perfections of unshakable resolve and of determination from the Sanskrit and Pali traditions, respectively. And now we're doing the three in the Sanskrit tradition that do not appear specifically in the Pali tradition, but are practiced there and explained in terms of, in other teachings and so on. So the first one was skillful means. Okay, so skillful means not only adapting one's teachings and one's actions to suit what is needed by sentient beings, but it also includes bodhisattvas being able to see sentient beings as empty of inherent existence and yet still existing, and so wanting to benefit them and lead them to awakening. In other words, not falling to the extreme of nihilism and thinking that sentient beings don't exist. And then it also, skillful means being able to, meditate in the form and formless realm absorptions, but without getting attached to the bliss in them. In other words, being able to maintain focused on the aim of full awakening. Okay, so then we talked about the two sets of skillful means. So now we're on the next one, which is power. Okay, so power is sometimes we hear power and we go, oh, power is the root of, everybody abuses power or something like that. We have issues with power because we think of power over instead of power with. And here we're talking very much about power with. In other words, the ability to really influence others in a beneficial direction. So it's not power where you're dominating others and forcing them to do something that they don't want to do or making them do something, like that. Okay? So power is of many types. The power of no longer indulging in the afflictions because they have been abandoned. Yeah. Do you ever think of that as power? But it gives you a tremendous sense of power when you're no longer waylaid by the afflictions. Okay, because you have the ability or the power to do so many things you couldn't do before, because you're not distracted by all the pesky afflictions that are making messes. Okay, the power of superior thought to train in the exalted wisdom of the Arya Bodhisattvas. Okay, so the power of, really having that thought, that determination to gain that wisdom. The power of remembering all Dharma teachings heard or read. Yeah, what did I just say? Okay, you're on your way to developing that one. Okay, so, that would be really nice to have, wouldn't it? Because this means all the Dharma teachings you've heard, not just in this life, but in all your previous lives, you have the power of recall and you can remember them and thus use them in your present practice and be able to teach them to the appropriate sentient beings. The power to remain in deep concentration without being distracted. Wouldn't that one be nice? Okay. The power of knowing the behavior of each sentient being in the countless realms. Okay, so this isn't the power of CIA spying on everybody, okay? This is because if you know the behavior of each sentient being and you have the ability to manifest different bodies and different personas, then you know kind of how to manifest in a way that's going to really be able to communicate with another sentient being well and be able to lead them on the path. Yeah, but remember, they're not just developed on the ninth ground. Okay. So in each of the 10 perfections corresponds with one of the 10 bodhisattva grounds. Okay, so these are grounds of the Arya Bodhisattvas who have realized emptiness directly. So we may list these things, because power is on the 10th, ninth ground. Ninth ground, right? Yeah. Yeah. Skillful means then unshakable resolve, then power. So it's perfected on the ninth ground, which is very high state. But it doesn't mean that it's not practiced before or after. Yeah. Because in all these kinds of things, you have to practice them for a long time. So it's, they're perfected gradually, and they say they reach their perfection on whatever ground they're associated with. But that sometimes it gives us the idea that they don't really practice them before, and then once they're perfected on that ground, they don't make any more progress in that particular one in the next ground or the grounds thereafter. And that's not correct. Okay? They just say it reaches the perfection. I'm not sure what that means, but it's very good to have 10 things matching 10 other things, And it gives you an ability to remember these things. Yeah. But clearly something has to be practiced even before you enter the path. And as you go beyond whatever ground it's perfected on, as your bodhicitta deepens, as you are able to remove more and more layers of defilements, then of course the way you practice each of the perfections is going to change too. Okay? So these things are continuously developing until Buddhahood. Yeah?
It really inspired when Venerable Jake Me tells me about Geshe Sopa's memory. And that really rings true here about the power of remembering all Dharma teachings and what you've heard or read.
Yeah, they actually say that that comes about on the great path of accumulation. So that's actually very early on the path. Yeah, but having the power to really use it, comes later on the path. But yeah, I mean, many of these, when they enter the monastery when they're young, they memorize a lot of stuff. And, so that then when they study, the text is there in their minds and they can call it up. Of course, they have to keep constantly reciting it, once they've memorized it, so it doesn't get forgotten. But I heard that Geshe Sopa recites Shantideva's whole book every day. Yeah, the engaging in Bodhisattva's way of life. So they recite very quickly. Yeah. If you've ever been to, I don't know how they talk that fast. Really, I mean, I cannot move my mouth physically that quickly to get out that many syllables. But I mean, they just zoom, totally zoom. And so that's how they're able to hold that, so many things, because they can recite them quite quickly. And one Lama I know, I've known him since he was, a little boy. And he was the teacher. He was one of Geshe Sopa's and Lama Yeshe's teachers in his previous life. And they found him, then brought him to Kopan when he was a child. And they say that sometimes when he was sleeping, he would recite texts that he had memorized in his previous life, not in the present life. But they were so much in his mind that he sleep talked, I guess. He recited in his sleep. Yeah, like have you ever woken up and you're reciting a mantra? Yeah, so like that, I guess. Maybe you wake up and you're reciting, this one harmed me and that one criticized me. Okay, got to be careful what we practice. Okay, so the power of knowing the behavior of each sentient being in the countless realms. The power to fulfill all our aims. So our chief aim for the purpose of ourself is the Buddha's Dharmakaya, so that means the omniscient mind of the Buddha, plus what they call the nature body of the Buddha, which means the emptiness of the Buddha's mind as well as the true cessations of that Buddha. Okay, so the power to fulfill all our aims, and of course the aims of others too, which are the two form bodies. The power of being skilled in distinguishing and examining the Buddha's qualities. Yeah, so you in the ninth ground, you're close to Buddhahood. So you're really practicing cultivating the Buddha's qualities so you can distinguish and examine them quite well. But of course, you have to start that early on in your practice. The power to not give up engaging in the Buddha's activities. Yeah, so bodhisattvas are not quitters. Yeah, they don't go like, oh, I'm just so exhausted, I've been doing this already, I'm on my almost third countless grade eon, and I'm so tired. And, it's like, can't I have a break? Can I skip the schedule tomorrow? Yeah. So they don't give up out of exhaustion, and they also don't give up because they're fed up with sentient beings. Yeah. Like, oh, these sentient beings, like they say, that's why Chenrezi's head cracked in so many pieces, because he liberated so many sentient beings from the hell realms, and then the next day he looked and the hell realms were filled with sentient beings again. So it's said that his head broke in many pieces out of sorrow. My head would probably break in many pieces out of frustration. Look, I worked so hard for these sentient beings, and what did they do? You liberate them, and then they go and create more negative karma and go right back to the hell realms, and then you got to liberate them again. Oh. Yeah, so bodhisattvas don't do that. The power to not give up engaging in the bodhisattva's activities. Yeah, so either because it's too much, you're overwhelmed, you're overworked, it's like you want a raise and you're not getting a raise, so you're going to go on strike and not do the bodhisattva's activities for a while. No, that doesn't happen either. The power to completely ripen the Buddha's qualities within self and others. Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it? To really ripen the qualities in self and others. The power of great love protecting all sentient beings without bias. Yeah, so think of great love as protection. Yeah, that you protect sentient beings with your love. What does that mean, to protect sentient beings with the power of great love? What does that mean? What do you think that means?
I guess teaching them not to give up, teaching them in any way possible, to love them whatever they are doing, wherever they're at.
So how does that protect them?
If they are under the protection of a teacher, a guide, and under the protection of the Dharma, they can progress along the path and not fall into the hell realm or wherever.
So love keeps the teacher and the Dharma there protecting them. Mm-hmm. But they have to respond too, don't they?
Yes, but for example, you are giving a lot of love to the cats, right? And we are all giving lots of love to the cats, and they need that. They fall into a lower realm. They need that especially because they fall because maybe of anger or craving or whatever. So what they need is what we can give as human being is love, and and the Dharma, so yeah, that is one means.
I can't say I give love to the kitties for their benefit. Sometimes I do for their benefit. Sometimes, to be honest, it's for my benefit.
No,
yeah?
That's not true, because you're always on us that we have teachings in Ananda, so you think about their benefit quite often.
What came to my mind is like when I see children that are given love, but I mean not attachment, but real love.
Yeah.
Those children grow stronger, more self-confident, more aligned with values, and they are greater, stronger beings. So for me, that's how I would see the protection.
Yeah.
You protect them by directing them to do virtue rather than non-virtue, so that they don't create the causes to receive harm.
Yeah. Yeah. The power of great compassion to eliminate the dukkha of all sentient beings without bias. Okay, so similar that, your compassion is so strong that you eliminate the dukkha of sentient beings without prejudice, bias. And the way you eliminate it is not by zooming in like Superman or Superwoman and lifting them out of the dangerous place, but by teaching them the Dharma. Yeah, they say that's how the Buddha protects sentient beings, is by giving the teachings. Yeah, because when we receive the teachings, then we are empowered to put them into practice. And by doing that, we protect ourselves. Yeah. And so one of the etymologies of the word Dharma is to hold, meaning to hold back from dukkha, from suffering. The power to experience the ultimate reality that is like an illusion, and the power of approaching the exalted wisdom of omniscience. Okay. Contemplating these powers of Arya Bodhisattvas gives us a glimpse of the qualities we will be able to gain by practicing the Bodhisattva vehicle. Creating the causes for such powers and using them to benefit ourselves and others will bring us great satisfaction, confidence, and exuberance to practice. So a lot of benefits from, creating the causes for these powers by practicing these powers as much as we can right now. And then the perfection of exalted wisdom knows the diversity of phenomena, conventionalities, and enables bodhisattvas to be of great benefit to all beings. Okay, so usually the sixth perfection, the perfection of wisdom, is often emphasized as knowing the ultimate truth, even though it doesn't. It includes much more than this. And then this one, knowing the diversity of phenomenon. In other words, knowing the conventional truths and how they function, which you really need to do if you're going to benefit sentient beings. Okay, then the three paramis in the Pali tradition that aren't mentioned in the Sanskrit of truthfulness, love, and equanimity. Okay, so truthfulness is speaking without deception. So in the Precious Garland, Nagarjuna mentions truth, speaking the truth many, many times. We should actually go through and count how many times, but he emphasizes it quite a bit. And what is very interesting, he says, even if the words are truthful, if it's not said with kindness, it is not the truth. Yeah? So it's not just the words being truthful, it's the mind that's saying them, having a good motivation, not wanting to harm others through telling the truth. Through speaking, that doesn't mean that you then lie in order to avoid harming others. Okay? Don't go to the other extreme. Through speaking truthfully and acting in accordance and acting according to our promises, we remain true to our word to benefit sentient beings and do not abandon them. Through this, they will come to trust us, which opens the door to our benefiting them. Okay, so it's important that we remain true to our word. Yeah, if we say things and then we act the opposite, nobody's going to have faith in us. Nobody's going to trust us at all. Yeah, and so that's why when we take precepts, we need to take our precepts seriously, because we're taking them in the presence of the Buddha. We're promising ourselves, but we're promising the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So we need to take our promises seriously. Of course, if something happens and we can't keep them, then we explain and we apologize and we purify. But it's important to speak truthfully. And I know for myself, if people do not speak truthfully to me, if somebody lies to me, it's like I can't trust that person after that. It takes so much for me to trust them again after they've lied. Yeah, because to me, truth-telling is the basis for any kind of friendship. Because I find when people lie to me, I find it's as if they're saying, you can't handle the truth, so I'm going to lie to you. And, I can handle the truth. Respect me. I can handle the truth. Don't make that call for me. Yeah. So, so I see lying to others as really a way of putting them down and disparaging their intelligence, that they can't handle the truth. Now, granted, some people can't handle the truth. And I know in my family there are situations where it was made very clear to me that if certain things happened, I was not to tell my parents because they didn't want to hear it. Yeah. So then you have to honor it. If people say, I don't want to know the truth, then you respect that. But otherwise, I think it... Yeah.
But if the person doesn't say the truth because they feel guilty and they're shy, they don't feel good about themselves, has nothing to do about you.
Yeah, but that's precisely why it does have to do with me. Because they feel guilty and they think I'm going to judge them. So that's a way of of putting me down, thinking that I'm so immature and we're going to judge them and condemn them for what they've done.
Well, Venerable, you're very special because usually we're being judged most of the time.
Yeah.
So now I understand your level of, I understand what you mean now, that I don't trust you if I lie to you.
Yeah. So, we remain true to our word to benefit sentient beings, and we do not abandon them. Yeah, so I think lying in some ways is abandoning people. Yeah. Of course, like I said, in my family, it's been made clear to me, my parents are both gone right now, but before that certain things they did not want to know, and I was not to tell them. Yeah. Yes, different family dynamics. Anybody else have that in their family? Oh, my family's unique, huh? No.
Sometimes telling the truth, you got punished.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Sometimes tell the truth and you get punished. through this, they will come to trust us. Through our telling the truth, others will come to trust us, which opens the door to our benefiting them. Yeah, so to benefit others, they have to trust us. Yeah, if they don't trust us, we can give them all the wonderful advice that we have, and they're not going to listen because the trust is missing. Okay, so trust is quite important to human relationships and to being of benefit. Bodhisattvas speak the truth, whether others react by helping or harming them. Okay, so bodhisattvas, they aren't afraid of other people's responses to hearing the truth. They aren't afraid for themselves. You know, they may not say everything to everybody because they know that's not beneficial, but that's not considered lying. But what they did, when they will speak what is their truth, whether without concern for their reputation or whether others praise or blame them in response to their speaking their truth. They teach the Dharma skillfully according to the inclination of the audience, but do not alter the Buddha's words so that others will give them respect or offerings. You know, this is really something that's quite important. I received the new edition of Buddha Dharma, and the heading was something about the changing world of Buddhism in the West, or something like that. And, you know, what you wonder sometimes, because when you teach Westerners, there's certain things people do not want to hear. They just go ballistic when you teach certain things. You know? You want to know what?
Yes.
The third precept to start with. People go ballistic. Okay? When you talk about the lower realms of existence, they don't want to hear it. Even sometimes talking about the dukkha of change, how what we consider worldly happiness is actually just a small pain that hasn't gotten bigger yet. They don't want to hear that. Okay. What else don't they want to hear?
Karma.
Yeah, well, they're interested in karma, but some things, certain aspects of karma, they don't want to hear about. Like that a small action can grow into a big result. No, they don't want to hear about that. Okay. So, I mean, you can look. What do you have resistance about in hearing the Dharma?
I was looking at the unshakable resolves of the medicine Buddhas, because it was mentioned in the unshakable resolve part, and one of them was that no being would have to suffer being born as a female if they wished it, and that just seems antiquated.
I agree with you.
Then why, maybe alter that one a little bit? Maybe, I mean, because I was thinking, changing the wording a little bit. A female birth will not be something to be suffered. There you go.
Okay.
Now it's the resolve to see that a female birth is not something seen as negative whatsoever.
Yeah, so that the medicine Buddha's vow was to reaffirm women's capacities instead of saying nobody would have to be reborn as a woman.
He makes the vow twice too.
Yeah,
it's in there twice.
Yeah, so I think that has a lot to do with the culture at the time, and if you look at it, what I've come to understand is it's some people interpret it, that kind of thing, as women are inferior. The way I've come to see it is when you are in a society where there's prejudice against women, then being born as a woman is one more obstacle. Not because female rebirth is problematic in and of itself, but because of the bias of the culture.
Then resolve to change the bias of the culture. And
Yep.
and that seems like the exact type of thing that could be changed for a benefit of the doctrine in the West.
Yeah.
Because we are still in a world where being born as a woman isn't a negative thing in and of itself, but will greatly limit you in certain spheres of existence.
Mm-hmm.
Vow to change those spheres of existence.
Yeah. So I think it's difficult to change somebody else's vows, but I think we can reinterpret their meaning and talk about that meaning. Yeah. And so in that regard, I think what you're saying is completely true, that we would pledge to help create a society in which people are treated fairly and treated equally.
That seems like a thin line between altering the Buddha's words. This says don't alter the Buddha's words.
Yeah. So that's the thing. You can't, I mean, Medicine Buddha said that. I can't say Medicine Buddha didn't say that, you know? But I can say what I think that means in today's culture is this.
So does the meaning of the Dharma change?
No. But I mean, the Medicine Buddha wanted the best for all living beings. So, for example, you know, I would not want to be born as a woman in Afghanistan. Yeah. Not because women aren't intelligent or are lacking something, but because of the social structure there. Yeah. So, like you said, the real thing that needs to be done is to change people's minds and to change, therefore, the social structure. Yeah. And so that's our real purpose. So, you know, that's how I think of the meaning of those kind of vows of the Medicine Buddha.
So the meaning of the Dharma doesn't change because the meaning of the Dharma is for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Right. And the Buddha Medicine Buddha wants everybody to be enlightened. It's not that he wants just the men to be enlightened and not the women.
But what is necessarily for the benefit of all sentient beings changes based on contexts.
Yeah. So,
the application of the Dharma.
Because society changes, then how you take the meaning of something has to change. So, for example, in our Bhikshuni precepts, there's one precept not to ride in vehicles. Okay? Now you have to look at why was there that precept not to ride in vehicles? And we ride in vehicles all the time. In fact, to go teach, we have to ride in a vehicle. So are we breaking our precepts, by riding in vehicles? I don't think so. At the time of the Buddha, people who rode in vehicles, first of all, the vehicles were powered either by a person pulling a cart or an animal pulling a cart, and that caused suffering to sentient beings, especially if the animal was whipped. And then second of all, it was only people who were very wealthy could ride in, palanquins and things like that. And so those people tended to be very arrogant. And clearly arrogance is not conducive for practicing the path. So according to the culture at that time, the Buddha said, monastics cannot ride in vehicles. According to our culture now, if we didn't ride in vehicles, I think we would be acting opposite to the Buddha's intention, because we would not be spreading the Dharma. We would be sitting here, Yeah. So I think to really live according to the Buddha's intention, then you ride in vehicles. But you make sure, first of all, that you're not arrogant. And second of all, that, nobody's getting hurt or subjugated by your riding in a vehicle. And so I take that to mean nowadays, to not, it's easy for me because I cannot tell one kind of car from another except according to their color. People tell me I'm picking you up at the airport in whatever, model or something. I have no idea what that kind of car looks like. Okay, if they say green car, okay, that helps me. But yeah, that's all I know. But to me, what that means is if somebody picks me up in a really nice car, I should not get arrogant thinking, oh, I'm riding in a sponsor who's with the sponsors who's really rich because look at their car. Okay, so I need to watch my mind in that kind of situation. Yeah.
I'm not, I completely agree with what you say, but couldn't one then continue to reason that the car that took me to the UU last night killed multiple bugs in the grill? A deer could step out and become killed. A person could become killed. Even driving a car supports a gas industry, which is further pollute. Even though you guys have 2 Priuses, we didn't take a Prius, and a gas industry is supported, and emissions are let off into the environment. Like you can't entirely mitigate harm. So I could see how one could argue that the Buddha would still prefer if no one who was ordained rode in a vehicle, until a vehicle is something that entirely fails to harm anything in any way.
I think you could say that the Buddha would not want us to ride in vehicles for frivolous intentions. If there was a good intention, for example, going to teach the Dharma, then even though you can't have something that is totally harm-free, you do your best and you make sure that the reason why you're riding in that vehicle is a good one. So that's why at the Abbey, we don't just, you need something, you want something, get in a car and go to town. Okay, you wait until there's a lot of errands that need to be done. You make sure that it's something that you really need to go to town for.
The one that bothers me is the descriptions of the hell realms with Zopa Heron were reading my words, my perfect teacher. And the chapter we just finished on the description of the hell realms just bothers me tremendously for a couple of reasons. One, it's one of the things that turned me on. It reminds me too much. I don't see the difference, and maybe you can explain the difference between that description of hell realms and the Cotton Mather's description of Christian hell realms. Okay, and then I worry that if I could not give that book for somebody, a friend of mine, to read, if he came across that chapter, he would have a terrible notion of what. And I can use the excuses for myself that you just talked about for the other, but. So that's why you give them. It just made me squirm to read that whole section.
Yes, it makes many people squirm because, especially if you were brought up as a kid, being told about hell, and if you hit your brother, you would go to hell. Or if you did these things as a little kid, and you're threatened with pain and punishment, then you read about even a Buddhist description of hell, and you don't like it. Okay, so that's quite understandable from somebody who's coming from our culture. Okay, somebody who grew up in Tibet or somebody who grew up in India who did not grow up in a Christian family with this idea that, somebody died for your sake, and you have original sin, and, chances are you're going to hell if you do the smallest negative thing. Somebody who didn't grow up like you did, when they read that, they have totally different ears. And they say, oh, there's a dangerous situation. I need to be careful of the dangerous situation. So you see, many of these teachings are given according to the audience at a particular time. And the times have changed, and the culture here is different. So I always see this as you have to see what was the original intent of what the teaching was, and how do you express the original intent in words that correspond to the listener's culture so that they can understand the meaning you're trying to convey. Okay, so I think that's how you have to do it. So you don't find me reading all through the descriptions of the lower realms, because I know how people react. Okay. On the other hand, when I teach about karma, or when I talk about things of, imagine having we find flies in here. Imagine being born as a fly. And what goes on in your mind? And what is your mental capacity? Yeah. And what do you have intelligence? You might be a fly on the wall, literally here, and hear a lot of Dharma teachings, but can you understand them? Can that benefit you? And so then if people hear it that way and think, oh, well, what would it be like to be a fly? Then they get the sense of, oh, I'm not a solid, concrete person. Yeah, I could be born in other kind of body forms. If you can't identify with being born as a fly because you think, that's just too far out, imagine, being born and being a baby your whole life. Yeah, imagine having a baby's intelligent your whole life. You have a human body, but a baby's intelligent. You can't do much to practice the Dharma. It's a big hindrance. Okay? So I think if your idea is to convey to people that our actions bring results, and virtue creates happy circumstances, and non-virtue creates difficult circumstances, people can understand that. And you just make examples and so on that they can understand according to their culture. Make some sense to you? Now, about giving the book to your friend, don't give that book to your friend. Give, Buddhism for beginners or open heart, clear mind, because they don't talk about that. Okay? So you choose for your friends something that would be applicable.
Also, I think Christian hell is supposed to be indefinite and inescapable, whereas Buddhist hell is just a temporary exchange.
Right. So bodhisattvas speak the truth, whether others react by helping or harming them. They teach the Dharma skillfully, according to the inclination of the audience, but they do not alter the Buddha's words. Okay, this is where I was. So that others will give them respect or offerings. Yeah. So sometimes this is one concern I have about Buddhism coming to the West, is when some people try to teach and they meet a lot of resistance from the audience, then it's easy to say not for the benefit of somebody else, but for the benefit of yourself, because you want to be known as a good teacher and you want to receive offerings, that, then I won't teach the subjects that are difficult for people. I'll only teach the topics that they like. And I think that can be dangerous in the sense that it's done for a wrong motivation, and that it can give people false ideas about the Dharma, like the Dharma only is about these nice things, and that the Dharma doesn't challenge you. And I think, for the Dharma to be really effective, it has to challenge us, and we have to squirm a bit. Yeah, I don't think squirming is bad. I've squirmed plenty with the teachings. Yeah, I don't think squirming is bad because we have sometimes such rigid ideas of how things should be that, and our rigid ideas collides with the Buddha's teachings. Yeah, if you have some faith in the Buddha as somebody, because you've experienced the benefits of the teachings and the Buddha's onto something, then it makes you step back and say, oh, maybe I need to rethink my solid idea. Yeah, maybe my idea is not God's truth. Yeah, that everybody has to follow. Maybe, I'm looking at things incorrectly. Yeah, so I don't think it's so bad if we're uncomfortable sometimes during teachings. Yeah, because, like I said, then you have to really think about it. And I know lots of times I've been uncomfortable, and then I have to think, and I have to, I think about the culture that it was taught to. I think about the culture of my teachers. I look inside and I say, what's the resistance inside me? Why don't I like this teaching? Very interesting to explore that. What buttons is this teaching pushing in me? And then, are those buttons legit? Am I understanding the teaching correctly? Or maybe I'm not understanding the teaching correctly. I'll give you an example, okay? In one practice I do every single day, there's one phrase where you are talking to your spiritual mentor that you're seeing as the Buddha, and you're saying, may I do only what pleases you. Now, for many people, they just read that, there's no problem. For me, may I do only what pleases you? Oh, that was such a button pusher for me. It like rang of Sunday school. I have to please God, but I don't know what pleases God. It's like I have to follow the rules, but the rules aren't clear. And if I don't please God, things are not going to turn out well. So that, and why should I have to please somebody else? Isn't this a path of discovering yourself and discovering reality? Why do I have to please somebody else? I had such a reaction to that phrase. It just totally drove me nuts. Okay? And I wrestled with that for a number of years until I finally could understand what it means and be able to say it in a way that was sincere from my perspective, according to my understanding, because I think my previous understanding, it was all Sunday school, and I'm taking Sunday school and putting it on top of Buddhism, and that's not fair to the Dharma. Okay. So, but this kind of wrestling with things, it makes you question, it makes you grow.
I'm interested in how you came to terms with that phrase.
Does it drive you crazy?
No, but I'm wondering how
it came to.
I have my own terms with it.
Okay. So, one of the first clues was given to me. Interesting story. I was in Israel. It was the time of Passover. A family that lived in the West Bank invited me to their home for Passover. Okay, so this is in the occupied territories. And they had a daughter. They were an Orthodox family. They had one daughter that was 26. In an Orthodox family, if you're a 26-year-old woman, you're an old maid. But she had so much faith in God. She was really very devout. And when I was talking with her, she said, you know, when you really love somebody, like how I love God, then you automatically want to do what pleases them. And that was the beginning of me being able to say, oh yeah, if I really respect the Buddha and treasure the Buddha, and I think the Buddha has some kind of wisdom that I don't have, then it would make sense that I try to please the Buddha in terms of acting according to the teachings, because what the Buddha wants more than anything in the world is for sentient beings to be happy, which means, in my case, to create the causes of happiness. So if I create the causes of happiness, which is what I want to do anyway, then my creation of the cause of happiness is going to please the Buddha. So when I say, may I do only what pleases you, it actually means, may I practice the Dharma well. Because that's what would please the Buddha. So that's the understanding I came to. So that now I can say that line without my mind going ballistic. Okay? So, and then there's been many things like that. Oh my goodness. Many things that, where my mind's just like, no, I don't like this. And then, you think about it some more. I mean, I always give the example of the simple one, too. I think I told you this, that, when His Holiness started saying that compassion was an antidote to low self-esteem. And I was thinking, how can compassion be an antidote to low self-esteem? You have to love yourself, or you have to have compassion for yourself before you can have compassion for others. Your Holiness, what are you talking about? And then, simply because he's my teacher and I respect him and he's given me good counsel and wonderful teachings in the past, then I thought, okay, what he said doesn't make sense to me on the level I'm hearing it. I've got to keep this in mind and keep investigating and questioning until I really understand what he means when he says that. Yeah, and so that's what I did. And then I came to another understanding. Yeah, that what he means is when you have compassion for others, you're taking the emphasis off a very afflicted, self-occupied way of thinking of yourself, and instead thinking about others. And that automatically, when you help others, makes you feel better about yourself. Okay? But you see, if I just said, I don't like that, why did he say that? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't correspond with what the Western psychologists say. Then, and so therefore I throw it out. Then I never would have really understood what he meant. Okay, so anyway, my point in this is that it can be very tempting, to change the teachings so that they correspond with what you think your audience wants to hear, so that the audience will give you offerings and proclaim you to be a wonderful teacher. And that is how the Dharma degenerates when people do that. Thus, sentient beings can trust that Bodhisattva's teachings are the actual Dharma, not something adjusted or made up to indulge their afflictions. With truthfulness, Bodhisattvas accept the empty nature of beings. Not being deceived about the true nature of beings, they complete all collections for awakening and accomplish the Bodhisattva path. Okay, so here truthfulness, it has something to do with forbearance. They can accept the nature, the empty nature of all beings. They aren't shattered by that. Love is the aspiration to give happiness to all sentient beings and create the conditions whereby they will be happy. Bodhisattvas think it is good to wish others happiness, but that alone will not give them happiness. I must act with love and joyous effort to accomplish this. Okay, so bodhisattvas aren't just sitting on the sidelines rooting for somebody else to do the hard work. Yeah, they're jumping in and doing it themselves. They also reflect that sentient beings are the incomparable field of merit with which they are able to cultivate virtue and fulfill the collections. In that way, bodhisattvas consistently maintain a mind that cherishes sentient beings and never abandons them. With an unbounded heart, they reach out to give happiness to others. To do that, they must eliminate sentient beings' misery and its causes, the afflictions. In this way, they generate compassion, wishing sentient beings to be free from suffering and its causes. Okay, so love requires commitment, and it requires skillful means. And it requires overcoming our stinginess and our reluctance to share. Okay, then equanimity is impartiality regarding the desirable and undesirable, the pleasing and displeasing. Remaining equanimous, bodhisattvas continue to practice no matter what comes their way. With equanimity, they benefit sentient beings without discriminating between those who help and those who harm. Okay, so this is a really important quality to cultivate. If we can't be equanimous to sentient beings, then we can't generate bodhicitta, because bodhicitta has to be directed towards all sentient beings equally. And we can't have, without equanimity, we can't have great love, we can't have great compassion, and we're basically stuck in having the kind of love and compassion that ordinary beings have, which is help your friends, harm your enemies. And as we all know, that kind of that mentality is not so trustworthy. Because if we trust somebody who has the idea, help my friends, harm my enemies, as soon as we mess up, that person's going to harm us, or they're going to eject us from the sphere of their influence. Yeah. Whereas if we trust people who have equanimity, then, if we as disciples misbehave, the teachers are not going to kick us out and say, I'm just done with you, you're too much. Yeah, but they're going to hang in there with us. And that's really important. If teachers want to benefit others, they need to be able to hang in even when the students are acting outrageously. And we do act outrageously, don't we? Yeah? We always think, oh, I'm the perfect student, I behave so well. Just even thinking that shows our arrogance. Yeah? I used to, when I did retreat in the early years, I used to think, oh, I'm doing such good retreat, I'm sitting so still, I'm really meditating well. my teacher, I'm sure he has clairvoyant powers, and he's seeing what a good retreat I'm doing. And then I realized just having that thought was indicating what a rotten retreat I was doing. Yeah, it was pure arrogance and self-centeredness. I want to be special. Notice me, notice me. Yeah, so I was especially arrogant. Without equanimity, the mind oscillates according to what we encounter from the people and things around us. This lack of balance impedes concentration, disturbs ethical conduct, and obstructs acting in ways that benefit sentient beings. Okay, so how does lack of balance impede concentration? Okay, when your mind oscillates according to perceiving things that are pleasing and unpleasing, people helping or harming, how does that impede your concentration?
Your mind is pulled from the object because of bias and, I like this, I don't like that. Mm-hmm. So you can't stay steady.
Yeah, because the bias invigorates also attachment and anger. How does it disturb ethical conduct?
When you have aversion, you want to push away or harm or get rid of. And if you're attached, then you pull close and you harm others to get what you want. Or it's just...
Yeah.
It could definitely lead to lying or unwise sexual behavior.
Yeah, definitely. And intoxicants.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And how does it obstruct acting in ways that benefit sentient beings?
Slows down our progress towards enlightenment to be a benefit to sentient beings.
Can you speak a little louder?
It slows down our progress to attain enlightenment for the benefit of sentient beings.
Mm-hmm. How does it do that?
Well, anytime we're involved with afflictions or disturbing emotions and negative actions, then that just slows us down. Mm-hmm. We're going in the opposite direction of helping.
Okay. And so it impedes our acting in ways to benefit others because we'll help the people we like and harm the people we don't like. Imbued with equanimity, we can face whatever comes in a balanced way. Wouldn't that be nice? Free of worry, discontent, and fear, thus increasing our determination to serve sentient beings and supporting the practice of all the paramis. So equanimity really helps our entire practice. Mm-hmm. Then the 4 ways of gathering disciples. Found in both the Pali and Sanskrit traditions, the 4 ways of gathering disciples are used by bodhisattvas to inspire people's interest in the Dharma and persuade them to learn and practice. These are also known as 4 ways of promoting the good of others and 4 means of unification in which we form a community unified by the common goal of Dharma practice. So these 4 things, they're found in the Pali tradition, they're found in the Chinese tradition. They may have slightly different meanings in the Pali tradition. There's a quotation that we're coming to, but you can see that they're definitely found there. Okay, so the first one, being generous and giving material aid. That's the first way to gather disciples. So now you're all going to stand at the door and say, okay. Yeah. So this involves helping others materially by supplying them with what they need. Others will be attracted by our generosity, and that opens the door for us to teach them the Dharma. Yeah, because it's true. If we're kind to people and we give them things, then they like us. And if we just say something about the Dharma, they'll be more receptive. Also, giving ensures that they have the material requisites to learn the Dharma, without which sincere disciples will be unable to practice. So if we want to help others, we have to make sure that they have what they need materially. Yeah. The Pali and the Sanskrit traditions both attest that the gift of the Dharma is the highest gift because it enables others to create the causes for temporal and ultimate happiness themselves. Okay, second one, friendly, pleasant speech. So this involves speaking to others in a variety of ways depending on the situation. We may talk with people about what interests them to make their acquaintance. Okay, so the first time I met my teacher in Los Angeles International Airport, we talked about dolphins because that was the level of my mind. So he was very quick, he practiced this quite well. Yeah, the first conversation wasn't about emptiness or bodhicitta. It was about his visit in Hawaii to SeaWorld or some such thing. Okay. When they are receptive to the Dharma, we speak pleasantly by instructing them in the Buddhist teachings and giving them wise advice when they face difficulties. Bodhisattvas speak politely, respect others, listen carefully to what they say, and do not force their ideas on others. They are not biased regarding who they teach, rich and poor, male and female, ordained and lay. So that's the second one. Third one, okay, to encourage others with beneficial conduct. We praise their good qualities and support them so that they can practice the Dharma and transform their physical, verbal, and mental actions into virtue. We may do this by organizing or leading Buddhist services, meditations, and retreats. Yeah, so for example, going into prisons and organizing teachings and services for people. By engaging in social welfare projects, Buddhists show the public that our compassion is not merely verbal, and they become attracted to the Dharma. So this is especially important now. Yeah, people want to see monastics actively giving to society. Yeah, that's an important value, I think, shared in the West. And so if we are engaged in social welfare projects and we are reaching out to benefit others, people think better of the Dharma. Yeah? Okay. Encouraging others who face karmic obstacles that makes them resistant to the Dharma requires great patience and diligence, but is worthwhile. Okay. In short, we try to arouse faith in the skeptic, virtue in the unethical, generosity in the stingy, and wisdom in the ignorant. Okay, so that's by not just teaching the Dharma, but all these other things you do to encourage others with beneficial conduct and to praise them, to be to show Dharma in action. And then fourth is acting congruently and living the teachings through personal example. So this means not being a hypocrite. So this inspires others to practice and increases their faith in the three jewels. Embodying the Dharma in our daily actions is essential to be worthy of others' trust and be able to continue to benefit them. Here we work and live with others, providing them with a good example of how to live a kind and ethical life. In skillful ways, we lead others to adopt virtuous ways. Okay, so this does not mean we need to be perfect. Yeah, sometimes we think, okay, I'm a role model for the Dharma and I better not mess it up. And that means I need to be perfect. But, hey, I'm a sentient being and I'm not perfect. Okay, so we don't have to be perfect, but when we blow it, we need to acknowledge it. Okay, because I think that in itself, being able to acknowledge our mistakes is a good example for other beings. It gives other beings quote, quote, permission when they make mistakes to know that they can acknowledge it and apologize, and that we'll accept the apology and things are fine afterwards. Okay, so it doesn't mean we always have to be perfect.
In the early days of your practice, were there any instances where you felt like, this bodhisattva path is so difficult, like not having the mental strength? Looking at the afflictions, did you had that kind of, and how did you overcome it? If you didn't have them, what did you work with that prevented this kind of?
It's just all too much.
Yeah, it's like, I can't do this.
I can't do this. I don't remember having that kind of things, feeling I can't do this. I mean, it did come up in the sense, yeah. Maybe not when I listened to teachings. I didn't feel that so much when I listened to teachings, because there I realized things were gradual. But when I looked at my teacher's behavior, and then I thought, I should act like my teacher, and it's like, I can't do this. He doesn't sleep. Yeah. He meditates all night. I mean, his head goes down for about 45 minutes like this when he's sitting. And aside from that, then, he's doing his practices. He's meeting with sentient beings, this kind of stuff. No way can I do that. So I used to feel like, oh boy, kind of, because I was comparing myself to him. And then I realized, wait a minute, he's been practicing many eons. He has realizations. I don't. I need to cut myself some slack. Slowly, gradually. I need to sleep, but let's be practical. Okay. I used to also torment myself when there was just so much work to do. I mean, just because I was at Dharma centers at the very beginning of the centers, and there's so much to do, and sometimes just feeling so tired and thinking, if I only had compassion, I would continue, and tormenting myself that if I only had more compassion. And then again, realizing, that doesn't do much good to torment myself by saying if I only had more compassion, that doesn't do any good. I just have to accept myself the way I am, slowly, create the causes, develop the qualities, So anytime there was this thing of, feeling maybe I can't do it, I was comparing myself to somebody who was way more advanced, and I was being quite unrealistic, and it involved not really accepting myself. Yeah, so I had to come back and just, this is what I'm capable of. I do what I'm capable of. I can improve in the future. But I have to accept that.
Do you still sleep?
Oh, you bet I do. Okay, so it inspires others to practice. Here we work and live with others, providing them with a good example of how to live a kind and ethical life. In skillful ways, we lead others to adopt virtuous ways. This is one feedback that I hear a lot about people visiting the Abbey, is they feel, first of all, they appreciate being able to interact with the monastics as much as they do, and they appreciate the kindness here. I hear that feedback a lot. Yeah, do you agree? Yeah.
Very much.
Mm. Yeah, and so, maybe we're doing a good job in that way. Stick your nose in the air.
Just doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, actually. Teaching the Dharma is highly beneficial, but it is also a great responsibility that must be approached gradually and with the permission of our spiritual mentor. So this is important. In the West, a lot of people come and it's just, well, I'm going to be a teacher. Yeah, and it shouldn't be like that. We shouldn't be setting ourselves up. A compassionate motivation for teaching is of crucial importance, and we must continually reflect on and purify our motivation. So don't think, oh, I got my motivation down pat, so I don't need to look at it again. Because like everything, as soon as we think we're okay and we got something, it's gonna come out of left field and hit us. The Buddha criticized monastics who taught in the hope that others would listen to them and express their appreciation by offering requisites and other gifts. Such a way of teaching is impure. The Buddha explained the pure way to teach. So this is from one of the Pali suttas. But a bhikshu who teaches the Dharma to others with the thought, the Dharma well expounded by the Blessed One, directly visible, immediate, inviting one to come and see, applicable, to be personally experienced by the wise. Oh, may they listen to the Dharma from me. Having listened, may they understand the Dharma. Having understood, may they practice accordingly. Thus he teaches the Dharma to others because of the intrinsic excellence of the Dharma. He teaches the Dharma to others from compassion and sympathy, out of tender concern. Such a bhikshu's teaching of the Dharma is pure. So by that we can understand what impure is. To give the Dharma to others, we must know it well ourselves. Otherwise, we run the risk of giving incorrect teachings and damaging students. We should not teach topics we do not understand well. When we do not know the answer to a question, it is best to say, I don't know, and then consult a teacher or research the topic in Dharma texts.